Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. I'm John Marsh. Randy and Stephanie are off. We call them on assignment, but they're off. Brian Houseworth off as well. Producer Hannah is here. And joining us, you've heard him on the Gary Nolan Show, Power of the Future's Larry Behrens. Larry, good morning.
Well, good morning, John. Thanks so much, and it's great to be here. You know, we were the last thing that we were talking about before we come on the air is what sticks in my head, and I was like, how much, you know, if Joe Biden gets 7 days of debate prep, I didn't get 7 days prep for this. What? Oh man, I said.
Like we called Larry and said, "What are you doing Thursday morning?"
Yeah, it was. You know, I don't know if 7 days would help me. I got to be honest.
Larry, you're so sharp. You didn't need 7 days.
Oh, see, Hannah knows. That's great producing. Just you know, appeal to my ego will work every time. So great to be with everyone this morning. Hannah and John, thank you for having me in. And I guess I pre-apologized already to John. I should probably pre-apologize to Hannah and the audience. Sorry for all the mess-ups I will inevitably do today. But it is an absolute privilege to be here and grateful to the Zimmer Radio Network for allowing me to be on again because the audience is so fantastic, your reach is so fantastic, and the show's fun. And the opportunity we have to talk about so many great things, I got to be honest, I was scouring the depths of the internet early this morning, trying to figure it out. And here's what I have, and this is one that it was reaching the top of the social circles I follow, besides, you know, making fun of Star Wars. I'll leave that for a later time. But this is the one that really got my attention. We're going to talk about so much today, too. And so it was hard to just kind of pick one. But we're obviously going to be talking about the White House pushing their cheap fakes conspiracy. Speaking of conspiracies, we're going to talk about energy with Daniel Turner. We're going to talk about following the money with Gabe Kaminsky of the Washington Examiner, investigative reporter there who does an excellent job of drawing the lines from what you see from the left and who has the money behind it. It's really interesting stuff. And of course, a whole lot of local and national news as well. But one guy's tweet is what got my attention.
This is a good one.
This morning. And I didn't know the guy. Here's someone none of us knew 48 hours ago. And I could tell you, his tweets are now protected. And yeah, I still say Twitter. I still say tweets.
Samesies.
That's right.
I don't think and people don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it is. I checked this morning. Say, this guy's probably reacted to this by now. Nope, tweets are protected. The whole thing because let me just paint the picture for you. This guy is named Ben Kaminsky. I may be mispronouncing his name. I'm not going to apologize for it. According to his LinkedIn profile, he works as communications director for Democratic Representative Marsh of Ohio. Okay, great. Names I didn't know before. And so he tweeted yesterday, and according to the story, I think this was from The Blaze, he's earned a tsunami of backlash in a turn of phrase I really appreciate. This is what he tweeted, and I will just read it to you, and you guys can help decide, does he deserve the tsunami of backlash? Just got a call to let me know my student debt has been canceled. This is why elections matter. Thanks, at Joe Biden. And he had a picture.
You guys are trying to get me all worked up at 6:11 in the morning.
I didn't mean to out of the gate, Hannah. I'm so sorry. And so I pre-apologized for the record. I pre-apologized.
As Larry and I said before we went on the air, it looks like I'm the only guy in the room without a student loan.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I don't, you know, I paid some off and then went back during the pandemic, and lo and behold, they wanted money for that too. It was really odd. But he included a photo of a document that reads, "Congratulations. The Biden-Harris administration has forgiven your student debt loans listed below," and it names the company. So let's do a quick little guess this morning. What do you think was the amount of his student loan debt? Because this is going to come into play later. All in.
Is it six figures?
No.
No? Okay.
No, lower. Much lower.
Huh. So, $5,000.
Close. It was about 8.
Oh.
8 all in. And I mentioned that because he has been out of college for, I think, 14 years. It says it took out his student loans in 2010. And as a staffer in Congress, your salary is public. So he makes $90,000 a year.
Wow.
Okay.
And is grateful that everyone who's hearing my voice right now has paid off his $8,000 student loan. And this gets into why his tweets went protected, because beyond just that one, people started looking at, well, let's look at his pictures. It shows him at preem seats in sports events. It shows him taking trips. And they're starting to wonder, maybe this wouldn't be the best thing to brag about so openly when this is the kind of life you're living.
My take on it sounds like the SAVE plan on Capitol Hill was more aptly named than we realized, huh?
Well,
go ahead, Hannah, because I'm a little bit on your side on this one, but I want to hear your perspective.
I'm also following this thread on Twitter, and one of the top comments said that not only that, but Ben Kamins wasted his money on an education so poor, he didn't learn that he shouldn't broadcast his home address on social media.
That's right.
So he has posted a photo of a letter he got in the mail saying that his debt was forgiven, and at the top is his first and last name and his address. He didn't black it out or anything. Come on, man.
It is, well, first of all, not to disparage all Washington staffers, not to paint them with a broad brush, but Ben is, there's another story. Ben Kamins is the perfect spokesman for the Democrat Party. So you're absolutely right. You would think as communications guy, he would know that this has my address on it. Maybe I shouldn't make that public. Maybe I shouldn't make these personal things public. All that aside, the discussion that has been there is, should taxpayers who chose not to go to college be on the hook for this? And the part where I am a little sympathetic, besides, my own bank account and what I'm paying, is, you go to universities, and I grew up in a state where no joke, for the class that graduated the year after I graduated high school, way back in 19... And
the 1900s.
I know. It seems like a whole century ago. They were given free college tuition if they went to school in state. Not my class.
Oh, I'd be so mad.
The juniors who were there when I was a senior, and ever since then. So what would you think? So that's been, like I said, back in 19. So what has been the long-term reality of that is not that everyone has a degree now and everything's smarter and everything's better in that state. What do you think was the biggest consequence of that? It was universities raised their tuition commensurately with what the new wink free was. So let's say the state kicked in $3,000 to help your free tuition. Well, lo and behold, universities in the state raised their tuition $3,000.
Funny how that works. Funny
how it is. And every university there got 15 vice presidents of underwater basket weave. I don't know, a whole bunch of, and so the bureaucracy of the university just went through the roof. And so that when the government stepped in to pay for it, the cost just went through the roof. And I worry about that. So first of all, I understand that the costs of university education are way out of hand because there is so much free government money on the table. I get that. And so that's where the sympathy is. Okay, these bills are higher than they should be for these students. That said, I signed the student loan paper. I agreed. Now, was I sitting in the student union just waiting, hopefully they'll give me a check so I can go to the mixer later? Of course, because I was 18 and I didn't think much of beyond the next hour. But that said, I had to bust my butt to pay back the ones for my undergrad and still now working to do it. And so, and I don't, yes, did colleges overcharge for it for a gluttony of bureaucracy? Absolutely. But ultimately, I signed it, and I would have a hard time looking at the folks around me and saying, you're responsible for it, you're responsible for it. But Ben's perfectly cool.
He doesn't care who's on the hook for it, as long as it's not Ben.
It does. Ben is doing just fine. And so, well, not his tweets now. R.I.P. Ben's Twitter account.
Yeah. And again, he put his address out there, so I hope that works out okay for him.
Swing by his house if you have a comment, maybe.
Oh, my gosh. There it is. Ben's going to come raging on us right now.
And of course, she's not here this morning, but Stephanie is perhaps my biggest critic when it comes to this topic. And it's because, she went to law school, so she accumulated a fair amount of student loan debt. And she and her husband, like, they worked their tails off to get it paid off very quickly. I know she said in the past that there were some months where she was paying more to her student loan debts than to their mortgage. Like, that's how much she was able to just grind it out and get it done. So she, has no sympathy for
very little sympathy.
Yeah, but it was funny that you mentioned this tweet, Larry, because I saw this tweet from Stephanie Bell on Twitter last night.
Oh, really? Is she the one that brought it to your attention?
She retweeted it. She didn't tag me or anything, but I saw that she retweeted it, and there's just an angry emoji is all she put with it.
The rage.
Yeah, so if you're listening, Stephanie, good morning.
And I just the real cynical jerk face of me loves the fact that he is a communications professional.
Oh yeah,
it's been there, done that on your side.
I
correct?
know it has. And as a person, full disclosure, I worked for a public official once, and I temporarily, and when I say temporarily, I'm talking, and I counted 27 seconds misspelled a word in a tweet, but the official was an education official. It was up for 27 seconds.
Womp womp.
I got a call from the Associated Press. Hey, what is it? What is it? I'm like, oh my gosh. So I've been there. I've not as bad as Ben's getting, but I've been there on the backlash of a misspelled tweet. By the way, the word was received. I forgot the I before E and all that. Anyway, so
that gets me every time.
Except after C.
And then my education that I got for the student loans I was still paying apparently didn't help me in that situation. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, did you post your home address on the internet for everyone to see?
And Larry wasn't an English major. Right?
That's right. That's right. I still struggle with the language today. No, I didn't post the home address on it.
So you've got something going for you there. That's all I'm saying.
Tried to think ahead on that, but that's a poor. On the other side too, I almost got to feel bad. Poor Ben, but not really. His student loans are good.
Brought it on yourself.
I know, and
you could have flown this under the radar with no trouble.
I just picture Ben walking into the office today, and I'm sure he's taking a personal day, wink, sick day, wink. Okay, Ben, walking into the office on Capitol Hill today, and
you think he wasn't invited for the long
with some of the base or some of the Americans here in the United States?
Listen, first of all, I think that we know that it takes time for people to feel the policies.
It takes time. Listen. Are you struggling to I don't know, fill up your gas tank, to fill up that shopping cart? Are you struggling because you're swiping the credit card
to buy a house?
50. Yeah, it just takes time. It's okay. It just takes time. These are the people who've been in office almost a whole term.
That's why we call it the daily DC rundown. Is we point fingers to the east, right, Larry?
Oh my gosh! I go back and again because I'm of a certain age, I go like that movie Office Space where they interviewing, the consultants are interviewing, and finally they ask, well, we have to ask exactly what it is you're doing here. So if you are elected president and you're going to be you campaign, you're going to be in charge of all this. Or in this case, vice president, and you're going to do all these changes, all these great things, and then almost 75% of your first term's over.
What would you say that you do around here?
Exactly. How effective are you as a leader? If it's like, yeah, I know it's been 3.5 years, but these things take time.
Watch out, they'll tell you to grab your stapler and go to the basement, right?
It is. It is I call it the luxury of detachment, and we all know what it is, right? If you have had the unfortune to have to go to Washington, D.C. and just get a view of the life that is being led there by Kamala Harris and folks like Ben, and you start to see they are completely detached from those of us out here who are working every day to make a living because their paycheck's going to show up regardless. It's going to just be there because it's off the backs of taxpayers, and they have become, what's the word? Oh yeah, entitled to it. And when they talk about entitlement programs, I always think they should add government bureaucrat to that lever. The behemoth, when Donald Trump first years ago introduced the term deep state, I laughed it off. I'm like, what is he talking about? What is that? And then you see it and you realize that here is a bureaucrat, sometimes PhD after their name, sometimes not. And they have, we call them the weebies. We be here before you are elected. Yep. We be here after you are elected.
I love that.
And they run things because they know the politicians are going to be gone eventually. And they say, I have a 30, 40-year career. And
they talk about the bureaucracy. Exactly. I mean, it's not a joke.
And who is the poster boy for this? Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Yeah, how long was he with CDC and the associate organizations? Decades upon decades.
Oh my gosh. And probably still getting consulting fees now on the side. It is, it's great work. I wonder if he's struggling with his student loans. That's all I'm going to say. I don't think Dr. Fauci is. It's interesting, and we'll get into a little more too, Hannah, but if we're talking DC rundown, we got to talk about cheap fakes.
Oh yeah.
Cheap fakes.
Cheap fakes.
Deep fakes and cheap fakes.
Don't believe your own lying eyes. So I guess for those who don't know, we'll get into it some more, but this is what the White House is trying to label every Biden gaffe as now at cheap fakes. And so if you haven't heard of deep fakes is when it's essentially AI, where they'll put, my face over Joe Biden's body, then I'm the one slipping and falling everywhere. And if they saw my high school football career, they wouldn't have to do that. They could just use my own face. But that said, it's computer assisted. A cheap fake, I guess, is what we would call selective editing anymore. So they accuse it of saying, oh, you just showed the 2 seconds where he, fell down. You didn't show the 50 seconds of him doing push-ups and pull-ups and, saving a bus full of orphans right before that. You're just trying to, that's a cheap fake. And it's,
have been very clear, have stressed that these the right-wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation. And so we see this, and this is something coming from your part of the world, calling them cheap fakes and misinformation.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. I'm John Marsh, producer Hannah in with us. Randy, Stephanie are off. Power of the Future's Larry Behrens in with us. The real deal, not a deep fake.
Oh, my gosh. I was trying to come up with a joke because if I was a cheap fake, I don't think like the price of minus 50. I'd probably have to pay you guys. I'm so cheap. That's how it is. It's it is not a great line for the White House to be using. And so let's talk about what this is. We touched a little bit before we went into the break about the difference between deep fakes, which is just fully AI generated falsehood, right? But now the White House is trying to trot out this term cheap fakes. And the best way I can describe it is...
Emphasis on trying.
Trying. They're going to... Do you remember when they tried out Bidenomics? Do you remember when they tried to trot that out? They're not saying that anymore. But we know why they're doing it, right? So this is from someone, I forget the name, at the Heritage Foundation. They're saying it's very clear what's going on here. Oh, it's gentleman, last name Mr. Denton. They're trying to push a new term underneath the school of misinformation to try and pressure social media companies to take action on videos of this nature. That's what they're trying to do. He says this kind of requires a wrap-up stage where you allege that something is a cheap fake or that it's malicious in some way and related to misinformation, and then you have essentially the evidence, the fact pattern, to go and push social media companies to take down the requests. We've seen this movie before. So the next time you see that video, regardless of what social media outlet you're on, and you see Biden, it is really one of our nation's great renewable resources is Joe Biden messing up in public. It really is.
Well, and the latest sort of Biden blunder that I've seen circulating the interwebs is from the, star-studded fundraiser that Biden held over the weekend. Yeah. He was on stage with Barack Obama. They were sort of saying their goodbyes for the evening. And Joe goes from waving to the crowd, and he just kind of freezes. And Barack Obama kind of gently grabs him by the wrist and kind of leads him off stage, hand on his back. I think Stephanie said, like, you would lead, a grandma or a toddler, right?
Yes,
and,
as one would the leader of the free world have to do.
Yeah, well, and I made the point earlier this week. Do you think Barack Obama wouldn't have come out and said, no, that's a fake video if it didn't actually happen? You know what I mean? Say what you want about
so
the
right.
guy, but if he sees a fake video of himself, he's going to call it out, and that has not happened.
And you have to wonder, I would pay a good amount of money to just understand what Barack Obama was thinking in that moment of this guy again.
Trying not to roll his eyes on camera.
I was
How
the
many
leader
cuss words
of the
were going through his
free
head?
world. I chose this guy as vice. I could have chosen anybody. I chose this guy, and here I am now having to lead him off the stage like a patient, and because he has no idea where he is or what's going on. And that's how you get needing 7 days of debate prep before.
Well, Larry, you and I were kind of joking for our older listeners who might be ready to might remember back to the MTV days. I mean, Joe Biden's kind of the modern day equivalent of Max Headroom, being the sort of, you wonder if he's just
That's
AI
right.
generated.
Look it up, kids, if you don't know it. It absolutely is. And folks forget, when I say a certain age, I bring up 90s references, Joe Biden had already been in the Senate for 20 plus years in the 90s.
Oh. You want to talk about perspective? That's wild.
Is that not insane? It was interesting. I actually I got the newspapers.com subscription and looked up Joe Biden's one of his first re-election campaign, and he took out an ad against, wait for it, he took out an ad against inflation. He was trying to distance himself from Jimmy Carter by saying inflation is too high. I'm trying to cut your energy bills. And I'm like, this was 50 years ago, and he's still pulling the same dog and pony trick. Only in Washington, and this is a bipartisan issue, only in Washington can you fail at your job for 50 years and get promoted to president.
Well, it's one of those deals, though. If you want to get in the Biden camp and say he was against inflation and all, he was maybe single-handedly responsible for the next guy who got elected president after Jimmy Carter.
Listen, Joe Biden.
Some guy named Reagan.
Yeah, Joe Biden. Kudos. He served with Abraham Lincoln in Congress. Great. But his record. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. I want to. It gets me all worked up.
What was it? We did the math on this a couple years ago. Biden's birthday was closer to Abraham Lincoln's assassination date than his own presidential swearing in or something like that.
No, I think it was the Kennedy assassination.
Yes, the
It was
Kennedy.
closer to the Lincoln assassination than it was to the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yikes.
I have to take these pauses so my blood pressure doesn't go out of control.
Deep breaths.
I know.
Breaths.
That's how you know I'm not a cheap fake, because they would take the pauses out if I were. But we've seen this movie before, right? With COVID, anybody who questioned, even just questioning, you were banned from social media. Your post, no matter how factual, which of course we know they were all factual now. Conspiracy theorist, taken down. You have to be deplatformed. And we saw the emails. The emails were coming from the White House saying, hey, this guy's a problem. He needs to be off social media. And the platforms, saluted, said, absolutely, we'll do it. This is what they're planning to do, because that is how worried they are. You're going to see the two-pronged attack here as we get into the election season, especially next week with the debate. You're going to see the two-pronged attack of, we have to realize that Joe Biden is going to continue to do these gaffes, these colossal mess-ups. So we have to find a way to make those not matter. And they're going to go down this cheap fake road so that the next one he does, there'll be a nice little note from some junior staffer at the White House. Maybe Ben, now that he's not busy paying off student loans. Some juniors,
getting that $90,000 paycheck.
That's
though.
right. No, he'll probably get a raise now for that. And then he's going to write, it's like, hey, this video of Joe Biden saying that Abraham Lincoln is still president. Yeah, that's a cheap fake. You're going to need to take that down. And anybody who posts it, you're going to need to suspend their account.
Well, and we have a text from Doug on the studio texter 874-9390. He's saying, John, you reported on your news cut earlier that Biden is ahead in the polls. I have a hard time believing that. And I think that's a great point. Polls, we always say, for what they're worth, show Biden's been ahead the whole time. And looking at his performance on the national level, it's mind-boggling to even think that this is going to be a close race.
It really is. And well, two things. One, I would, as someone who delves into the world of polling, obviously you have to look at it. The folks like to do this a lot, especially on the other side of the aisle. They like to do the national poll. They like to say, what is his approval versus this guy's approval nationally? And that's great, and that's nice to know and fine. But we don't hold the presidential election nationally. It is a state-by-state type of election. And
why
so
we have electors.
That's why we have electors and an electoral college and so forth. And so you can pretend that, the ever-shrinking population of California has an outside voice.
The state.
Excuse me, sorry.
I always have
that was a cheap fake.
Yeah, I always have to remind folks, not the big city in Missouri of California, but the
That's
state,
right.
the bad
That's
one.
right.
Gavin Newsom's California.
Yeah, that's right. The People's Republic of Socialist Love on the West Coast, California. They with their population, they can be oversampled in a whole lot of these things. You have to read the fine print, which sadly nobody does. But there was way back when I was in TV news, and they would have those. They call them flash polls. My favorite part was that, like, okay, you guys just ran this flash poll, and it was probably the three guys in the break room.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's who you're asking on this. There are so many ways it can be manipulated.
TV on the flash polls, we always remember the line, too, in the small print where the anchor would say, we need to remember there is a deviation margin of plus or minus 3.9%.
Non-scientific, and it's a thing, but it's absolutely true. Right. And they say it very loud. And so it is... I guarantee, watch. And I said the one prong will be trying to minimize what Joe Biden is doing, try to get it, so you don't believe your own lying eyes, try to get it away from any type of audience. The other part is, and John and I were talking about it, they're going to start throwing that accusation at Trump. They're going to start saying, well, Donald Trump has gaffes too. Well, I've interviewed Donald Trump. And
CNN's headlines, as you and I were looking at them before we went on the air this morning, said longtime reporter who's interviewed Trump 4 to 6 times says he has cognitive issues. It's like, okay, here we go.
Super duper reporter Pinky swears that Donald Trump has the problem too. And all that to say, again, in the political world, I personally just have to smile because that proves that the other side is really sensitive to the attack, that they're really, if they are working overtime to try to Band-Aid, plaster over this huge gaping wound that they have in their narrative, then they starting to see that it is the American people are believing it, and so they have to react to it in some ways. And I'll just throw this out here before we get to the next break. Speaking of deep fakes, cheap fakes, can we just listen, not to call CNN out, but I'm going to call CNN out. Go to CNN.com right now, just right now, and tell me if you think a human being wrote this headline. Biden and Trump am I saying right? Hilke?
Hilke, correct.
I'm the new guy. I apologize. Hilke Ice Plant in Freeburg. The plant is being called a complete loss. I was actually in Freeburg on Tuesday and driving by, and I was something about Missouri. It amazes me how much industry and production there is going on, particularly in rural areas. And so this is just devastating to hear about this. Numerous trucks were on the scene, and flames and smoke could be seen high into the air. Crews say the fire started around midnight. And John, as someone who's an outsider, I've seen this ice all over town. I see it everywhere. This is a huge reach and a huge loss, right?
Yeah, the Hilkes, have been at this a long time. Started with a really, little modest company out there with a couple of chillers and freezers, and started doing ice and got bigger and bigger and bigger. I know they did a big expansion. I think it was last year or so, and I think when we talked to them at the time, they indicated their ice was in 25 states.
Wow.
800 retailers and other customers that bought their ice. If there is an upside to this, we're hearing from them, though, that they're members of an ice retailers association, and suppliers in other states are going to help them out and keep supplying their customers, not just here in mid-Missouri, but in all their markets.
And how cool is that? Other businesses...
No pun intended, right?
Well, yeah. Technically helping out a competitor, right?
Sure.
I just think that's really cool. It's a little early for a Feel Good Friday, but I think that this is one of the better stories to come out of the last month or so.
Well, and when you talk about fire and total loss, it's hard to use the words thankful, but there are things that we need to look at. First of all, no one was hurt, thankfully, in that, and all the firefighters and everyone is safe. But it is devastating because I think about employees who are, needing to work and
guys
about
that drive the trucks.
Driving the trucks, the delivery, and not only that, it's a product that we need this time of year especially. And so obviously, hoping for the best outcome and a quick recovery for the community and for the factory there. But just, devastating news, and accidental fire is what the ruling is as of right now, right?
It's what the fire marshal's office is saying. Their kind of preliminary report, accidental, and started one of their operations there. And I guess one of their employees, it was one of the ones who spotted it first around midnight, not this past midnight, but 24-hour news cycle ago.
Right.
And they brought in fire departments. I think they ended up with 12 supporting departments there because, to fight a fire like this, they immediately exhausted the water supplies in the little town of Freeburg, and were bringing in tanker trucks, even concrete trucks filled with water to help work at the scene to have a water supply on hand.
Wow. It's and so I feel out of place because it doesn't seem this, obviously this company and this operation is an institution to the area. And so as someone who doesn't know those institutions very well, and I feel like I'm inadequate to describe what this type of loss can be, but obviously hoping for the best for the community, for the employees, for the company, that they are back on their feet, and grateful that there are those who are, you're right, Hannah, technically probably competitors, but they look in the situation quickly and say, no, we're here to help. That is something that we don't see a lot of anymore.
That is true. You think about that, and it's like sort of cycling back to that whole sort of small business mindset. And how many of our businesses we heard are small businesses like this company?
And I don't know about you. This is just me. I'm not trying to start anything. But
oh boy! Everyone, buckle up.
On my way home, I'm going to buy if there's at the local store some Hilke ice. I'm going to buy some. If there's some in there right now, if it hasn't already been bought out, it's a way that I'm trying to think of how would I show support, and that's the best way I can do it right now. I don't need ice right now, but I'd be glad to try to support this company that's going through a difficult time for all they do for our region and our area, providing jobs and providing a product that we need. It's the smallest little thank you that I could think of to say right now. I don't know if it'll be helpful. I don't know how the economics of it would work out, but I'm going to be buying a little bit today just to recognize that they do so much good work, and to
might be a collector's item.
Well, hopefully, I don't know if it would help the road on recovery or so forth, but it's something that it's that can be done, because again, we take for granted all this great stuff that we have and the people that make it done, from the ice that shows up in our store and every product that shows up in the store, the lights that power everything. We take for granted all the hard
This Power of the Future's Larry Behrens. Larry, good morning.
Oh, good morning, John. Thanks for having me, everyone. So great to be joining you in mid-Missouri this morning. It's going to be a warm one. It's going to be one of those days where, you know, the climate protesters would say it's abnormal. The actual first day of summer, they're going to say, oh, it's hot today.
And humid.
And so, what they're going to do, you know, whereas you and I would just say, you know, it's hot. We're going to maybe sit in some air conditioning, have a cool drink. They're going to decide, you know what, we're going to go block a highway. We're going to go deface priceless work of art. Our next guest has done a fantastic job and continually does a fantastic job of following the money. If you're not following reporters in Washington, D.C., Gabe Kaminsky is absolutely one that you should be following. If you want to know how something that pops up in the news is funded by the left wing, Gabe draws those lines on a daily basis, and he has a new article, I think was out earlier, about the Hollywood and left-wing foundations that are behind the climate charities bankrolling extremist groups, and he has the receipts and names. Gabe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Larry, yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, Gabe, so paint a picture of how this works, because we've all seen on, you know, we turn on the TV, we're on the internet, we see the people pouring dust on the Constitution or gluing themselves to a highway or blocking traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge. And by and large, those of us here in mid-Missouri say, boy, those guys are lunatics, and glad we don't have to deal with that here. But it's not a spur-of-the-moment decision on the part of these folks. It's a well-oiled machine, as it were, no pun intended.
Yeah, no, that's right. And this is something we actually reported several months ago, but it's back in kind of the spotlight because at the congressional baseball game in Washington, D.C., protesters, anti-fossil fuel protesters had ran on the field and were actually arrested, right? And some of these activists are the same people, as you just said, who are gluing themselves to sports cars, actually just threw orange paint on Stonehenge in England, gluing themselves to highways and throwing paint on the Mona Lisa. But as you kind of noted there, they're not all random. Actually, when your listeners see all these protesters, they're actually largely and pretty much always connected to a nonprofit group in Beverly Hills, California, called Climate Emergency Fund. And Climate Emergency Fund is funded by Hollywood celebrities, actually. But notably, the most ironic thing, Larry, is that Climate Emergency Fund is funded by a woman named Aileen Getty, who's an heiress to the Getty family fortune, which was actually earned in the petroleum industry. So, luckily, fossil fuels is greenlighting her with the opportunity to fund anti-fossil fuel protests.
And it's interesting because there's more than a few of those type, we'll call them family connections, where it is the granddaughter, daughter, or grandson of a tycoon in some industry, and they're the ones funding it. But there's also folks that, they get their name in some of those Hollywood productions. And your article points out some of those as well. Chelsea Handler is a name that comes to mind, throwing a bunch of money about it. But a name that was I didn't recognize, but that you paint forward in your article is, let me see if I can find it here, Adam McKay. He's pledged $4 million to it, and he directed, wait for it, the 2021, do I call it a movie? So that Netflix movie, Don't Look Up, he was the director of that. And so even when you see the movie pop up, that movie funded by the same guy who's funding these protesters. And so go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, when you look at these connections, and what they're trying to do is prove that, when you see these crazy acts that they're doing, that it's just the youth rising up. They're so frustrated with the world around them. But really, you have to look at it as I look at them as professional sports teams, and they're paid. I won't say athletes, but paid actors for on a production for doing these things. And it's what we call in the business AstroTurf. It's made to look like some grassroots, like it's the people rising up. But no, it's really 100% fake.
Yeah, I think it's a really wild experiment in purported grassroots activism, because like we're kind of describing, is a situation in which largely one organization funded by powerful people who themselves are, lounging at their lavish homes in Hollywood or across the world, not getting their hands dirty, while groups under them appear to be grassroots and are seeing, student activists who work with them get arrested and whatnot on behalf of their cause. It's kind of a bizarre phenomenon, but it's a really good kind of case study in what we see with nonprofit activism, which is kind of these shell organizations, which, if you kind of follow the breadcrumbs, it typically leads back to one group that, not always, but in this case, it really does. And I think these protests, these demonstrations, they're really not minor. I think that, these are like massively disruptive demonstrations that I think many have said pose, and I think fairly, national security issues. I mean, how is it just, normal in a society, right, for a bunch of 20-year-olds to throw paint on the Mona Lisa and we just move on? I mean, there has to be some reckoning, right, with the fact that this nonprofit group is playing a really driving and destructive role in mobilizing young people to take actions that are really, really detrimental to society.
Yeah, and I would argue, Gabe, there is a reckoning. They all get jobs being spokesperson for Congress, and they get their student loans paid off. So, it comes around. I know John has a question for you as well.
Yeah, Gabe, I think for a lot of people out there, probably the question they've asked from the get-go on some of these campus protests, that the whole slick way they're presented, it all kind of takes people back to the heyday of Black Lives Matter and their funding stream.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think similar, like we were saying, kind of with this climate protest, I think we could use this as another example. So a lot of these pro-Palestinian, or we could say pro-Hamas demonstrations on college campuses and or across the United States since last October, they similarly often appear sort of grassroots, but overwhelmingly, it's kind of the same rotating cast of organizations behind it, and they actually share similar funders in the likes of Bill Gates, the Rockefeller family, George Soros, and other wealthy Democrat mega donors. And the reason, the more specific way, is those wealthy billionaires support kind of a network of nonprofit organizations that themselves are funding and sort of supporting and training and building out these protesters. I'll give you one kind of example of this that we've reported on a lot. Is there's a charity in Arizona. It's called Alliance for Global Justice. It's received a lot of money from major left-wing donors. Alliance for Global Justice, a 501c3 charity, meaning it's got tax-exempt status. It has certain obligations under the law to not engage in political advocacy. Alliance for Global Justice has a project called the Sami Dune Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network.
Wow.
And Sami Dune's an Israeli designated terrorist organization. And Sami Dune shares employees with the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, a U.S. designated terrorist group. And Sammy Dune is organizing protests across the world after the October 7th terrorist attack. So we have a situation here in which an Israeli designated terrorist group that basically is a front for a U.S. designated terrorist organization is on college campuses and rather just cities across the United States or across the world, mobilizing protesters. And people might see Sammy Dune and think, oh, Sammy Dune is a standalone group. What is this group? But no, Sammy Dune, if you follow the trail here, it leads back to a terrorist organization, and more specifically, it leads back to a group in the United States that, for some reason or another, has tax-exempt status under the Internal Revenue Service.
Wow. Well, Gabe, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and for the work you do in drawing these lines, because I wanted folks to understand, first of all, to see your work, and second of all, to see this picture that the left in any number of areas. And you're right. Today's climate protester is tomorrow's pro-Hamas protester, is the anti-Israel protester on Thursday. It is the same thing. And speaking to the fact that they're, funded by a lot of Hollywood, maybe these protesters should start having their, link names on their LinkedIn for, I was at that protest production. I was at this protest production.
Should maybe get union scale.
That's right. So, Gabe, where can folks find your work? That's right. Where can folks find your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at GE Kaminsky. That's GEKAMINSKY. And also, please follow our work at WashingtonExaminer.com.
Gabe, appreciate the time today, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
And we're up against a break here. So grateful you're
It is the first day of summer. I'm wearing a hoodie in the studio right now, guessing I probably won't be wearing that when I walk to my car this afternoon to go home. And I have a car with black leather interior for the first time.
Woo!
I'm quickly learning that it is very warm inside when I get in my car. But yesterday on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, I posted a photo of what I'm calling one of my most proud accomplishments to this date. And it's not even really an accomplishment, right? It just feels like it is.
I saw this. It's
you
fantastic.
did? Okay. So I was trying to use my pen yesterday. It's one of the Sharpie brand pens. They're really good pens. Couldn't get it to work. Got frustrated. Took it apart, and I realized I used every last drop of ink in that pen. And I don't think I have ever done that before because I don't know about you guys. I lose pens all the time. They get swiped off my desk, because it's never my fault, right? But I think this is the first time I've ever used all of the ink in a pen. And so I was kind of strutting around the office yesterday feeling like I was somebody. So I've asked on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, what's something that feels like a huge accomplishment, but isn't really? We've got a couple folks weighing in. Scott says, getting all the way through a Tootsie Pop without chewing it. He was unable to answer the question of how many licks did it take. But he did say that if
2, 3.
he did say that if you twist the stick as you pull on it, it maybe will be successful. So if you're eating a Tootsie Pop anytime soon, maybe try Scott's method. And then Ben chimed in and said that stopping the gas pump on an even dollar on a perfect gallon amount is what does it for him. And I did that last night. I was trying to get to an even gallon amount to, get more cash back on my little Upside app. And I nailed it. So, John, Larry, you guys have anything that feels like a big accomplishment?
Oh, I do.
But isn't really?
And people are going to hate me. So first of all, the pin is huge. I've never done. I don't remember when I ever done. That's huge. Don't let anybody demean that. That is a big deal. Especially after I say mine because it is. I feel like I'm glad I did not post my home address on Twitter because this is going to make people rage.
Uh-oh.
You know when you go through the drive-through at any fast food establishment, there's 2 lines now. There's an inner and an outside lane. I always take the outside lane because that person controls kind of who goes there. I feel it's a big accomplishment if there's someone on the inside lane and I can order so fast and quickly that I then get ahead of the person that was ahead of me before. I feel like I've just robbed a bank.
So you're like racing the other person, and the other person probably doesn't know that they're participating in a race.
And my wife and my kids hate me about it because I'm like, know what you want, say it fast. Don't none of this guessing. We're going to get the order. We're going to get it fast. We have to. And I get competitive at it. And when I get ahead, oh, it's glorious. But on the flip side, when like a car that came in after me goes before me, I mean, you might as well check me into a mental institution.
Sort of like the drag race on the 2-into-1 on-ramp on the Highway 50, right?
That's right. It really is. Yeah, I'm a joy to deal with in the school drop-off line. If this is how I act at the fast food drive-thru. Yeah, so I am trying to get ahead of you at the fast food drive-thru. That's my victory when I can get it. It's probably not that big of an accomplishment, but I feel like I do it. How about you, John?
Small victories. Boy, I don't know. Does illegal online gambling count? No, we probably won't go there.
Stephanie not here, so we can maybe talk about it. I don't know.
Well, if you make the parlay or whatever, it's maybe a good day, and then you look at it, and then the recycle is you lose it all down the road. But that's small victories.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is when you go to check out at a store and it ends up being an even dollar amount, like without you trying. That always feels really nice when, it's an even number with no cents attached to it. Rebecca on the texter, 874-9390, says that her big accomplishment is making it through the day without throat punching someone.
Oh, good for you, Rebecca.
Kudos, Rebecca. That is a feat.
Here and along with us this morning, Power of the Future's Larry Behrens.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me in, and thanks for letting me into your radio today. I'm having a good time, and I say that because I'm probably about to bring the mood down. So, sorry. John and I were talking about this, and this name, when I say it, will rightfully bring anger to probably people of a certain age, people who
as it should,
rightfully, absolutely. And I can't wrap my head around how she is still in the news, but yet here we are. She is still in the news, and I'll just read the story.
She's still kicking, no less. Huh?
And it all today. It seems to be a theme. It all wraps back to CNN. By the way, it all wraps back. But okay, calm yourself, Larry. I'm talking to myself, really. Actress and activist Jane Fonda said this week on CNN's The Situation Room that if former President Donald Trump is elected in November, we will not have a livable future. Happy first day of summer.
There you go. Well, and I was waiting for the kicker to be that she's going to move back to Hanoi again or something. Maybe.
And that's it. We'll talk about that here in a second, but that's, she showed, first of all, I don't know where her relevancy comes from. I mean,
was married to Ted Turner.
Right? Hi, my name is Jim Producer. I'm producer for The Situation Room, a national broadcast that has, dozens of viewers on CNN. And who can we get to Tuesday? Well, it's Tuesday. We got a debate coming up. We got all these things. Jane Fonda would be great. Who has that rationale? So this was her quote, verbatim, as it were. The elections in November. She says the elections in November or existential. Really, I'm reading verbatim. The elections in November or existential. Really, who wins in November is going to determine whether we have a livable future. It's as simple as that. There's a very stark choice. It's not that I'm 100% happy with President Biden, but he is someone that we can work with, that the American people can work with. Yeah, we can lead him off the stage. That's how we can work with him. But
pay $10 a pound for hamburger at the store.
That's just it. And I can't. I mean, if I went through Jane Fonda's history in public life, it would be a master class in how you remain relevant for really doing absolutely nothing or abhorrent, terrible behavior that she's done, right? She was getting arrested. She posted with the enemy during the Vietnam War, and everyone said, oh, she's done. And they still keep her relevant.
Then she came back and reinvented herself with her exercise videos in the 80s.
And I can't, and I don't know, my brain, I guess, tries to shift without a clutch when I think about, okay, actress, daughter of a famous actor,
wife of the CNN founder.
Correct. Treasonous, person during the Vietnam War, to workout videos in the 80s, to movies in the 90s and 2000s, to on CNN in 2024. Saying it's not going to be, and this is what, I get worked up about all the time, and you're going to hear it for the rest of this election season, particularly as we lead up to the debate. It's, if Donald Trump is elected, this will happen. If that. It's like, do you not remember he was elected? And
it did happen.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't recall us not having a livable future back in 2017. All these things, all the existential crises they say will happen if he's get elected, you could just point to, no, none of that happened when he got elected last time. So maybe, just maybe, everyone is lying. So there's another point. Speaking of everyone's lying, there is a discussion out there. I don't know if you guys covered it here. I think there was maybe a mention of it. There were some pretty major elections in Europe couple weeks ago.
Yeah, to the tune of almost 30 nations voting on the same day in the European Union.
How do the Europeans coordinate like that? Anyway, I don't know. Maybe it's soccer related, I'm sure. Anyway, the recent European Parliament elections saw sweeping losses for the Green parties. This is from Daniel Turner, my boss at Power of the Future. It's in the New York Post. Sweeping losses for the Green parties across the continent because even in Europe, they're getting tired of this agenda. They're getting tired of paying more for everything. They're getting tired of broken promises of just spend more money and we can fix the weather. They're getting tired of all this because maybe they've heard too many Jane Fondas talking about how we're going to have a livable future or not have a livable future if we just do this.
Well, you've heard, and if you've watched the stories, the story that's sort of kind of cycling across many countries in Europe is we never intended the European Union to be so heavy-handed and controlling.
I know, and maybe that's the serious answer to the question of how they got all their elections on. Maybe they were mandated to do so. But let me just, it's something that gets a little weedy, and I'm going to nerd out for a little bit, but work with me on this. Back in January, the Biden administration, without the help of Congress or without anybody's approval, they canceled new liquefied natural gas exports. And for those who don't know, natural gas is what heats millions of homes, including those here in Missouri, when it's cold. And they said, we're going to stop our exports of that. We're going to stop the natural gas that we make here in the United States, particularly in states like Pennsylvania. And we're going to just not do that anymore because, again, we want a livable future. The climate crisis is existential. So where have our friends in Europe been getting their natural gas since then?
Probably Russia.
From Russia. 2 years removed from Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, where they all swore off that we were not going to buy his stuff, he is raking in billions because the United States has pulled back their energy work. And so I know this is the day job and what I work in, and so it can get a little weedy. But when we talk about, if this, then that, if Ben wants to talk about who you vote for matters because he wants to get his student loans paid off, even though he can't pay off $8,000 on a $90,000 salary after 14 years.
That's all that money he's paying for natural gas.
It is. That's it.
DC apartment.
That's right. That's it. And so we need to talk about the consequences on the other side. And I know every person hearing my voice right now has seen those consequences at the grocery store, trying to buy a home, trying to rent anywhere to live right now. And so I get really worked up when we see folks that were, I would argue, never really relevant, like Jane Fonda, try to tell us that we're not going to have a livable future when so many people are really struggling to live in the present with this current economic situation.
And you wonder about that. And like you said, you're talking about the producer of the show on CNN. It's like, how much of your demographic even knows who Jane Fonda is on a CNN? You would think, a lot of their demographic would spend younger than Fox News, if nothing else.
Well, maybe not. Maybe they know their demographic really well.
Maybe they do.
And maybe it's
way up there.
Maybe it's in correctional facilities where they can't change the channel. Maybe Jane Fonda appeals to that audience. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, when we and that's the reason we brought on Gabe, because when you see something like this that pops up in the media, you're like, where did that come from? Why is this person who is not relevant in any way? You have to wonder, was there some money changing hands about getting them on to say this specific thing? Because, you guys are producers, you try to bring on folks who are relevant newsmakers at the time. And Jane Fonda doesn't fit that category for, I don't know, maybe she's got a new Tom Brady movie, the sequel. I don't know.
80 for Brady #2.
She added, I'm primarily a climate activist, and this, I guess, is the best way that I can describe what will happen if the Orange Man is elected. Because as we know, we read papers recently. Deep breaths, Larry. Deep breaths. I'll try to pull it together. But I would argue if even Europe is, and not to offend anyone from Europe, but kind of to offend some people from Europe, if even Europe is understanding this doesn't work anymore and they're kicking out people who are following the Jane Fonda lead, I would argue hopefully some writing is on the wall for our elections coming up in November. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I agree. It's one of those things that just makes, I think, the average person, wake up family member, sort of stand back and scratch their head and go, who's coming up with this? Who's coming up with these ideas?
And this is not, I would normally say this is a conspiracy hat, Larry, but no, this is proven. So after Biden did that pause on the natural gas, left-wing environmental groups like the League of Conservation Voters announced $2 million to buy advertising to praise him for combating climate change. And I think it's a relevant question if part of that $2 million was to get Jane Fonda on CNN. We know CNN's not making money off of viewers. I'll tell you that. I kid CNN. No, I don't. Nobody's watching. And so it is something to realize when they try to tell you what the news is and it doesn't jive with the reality you're experiencing, perhaps it is a whole lot of astroturf going on. That's just my 2 cents on it.
And the AI angle that we brought up on CNN before, because we've been running gag between Larry and I this morning. We've been glancing over at CNN's auto updating headlines, and it's like you read these headlines, it's like people don't talk like that.
They really don't. And now maybe we just answered our own question too, John. It's what producer booked Jane Fonda? Maybe it was the AI bot.
Exactly.
The AI bot.
Maybe Jane was digitized.
That's right. That'll get us into some trouble. That's okay.
Wisconsin, where the convention will be held, starting on July 15th. Each of it coming up, at least it was supposed to. On June 4th, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported the website section called News and Updates highlighted a photo, not quite Milwaukee, but of Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam.
What?
According to the Internet Archive, the errant photo had been in place on the page since February.
Jane Fonda posted it. Jane Fonda.
Oh, boy.
RNC declines to comment. Now we understand.
I bet they do.
And the Dems are now concerned that Joe Biden may actually go to Ho Chi Minh City for that same time frame. Now you know the rest of that story.
Man, since February, that's not an insignificant amount of time.
That was sort of like our catch on Twitter/X the other day when the wrong thumbnail got posted on one of our stories briefly, but Hannah rescued us. So thank you for that one behind the scenes.
Without outing exactly what it was a headline describing a crime, and it attached a lawmaker's photo to it randomly on Twitter.
But Hannah caught it and corrected.
Yeah, making it look like that lawmaker was, it was bad.
A very pro-life lawmaker, which made it even a little funnier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess that makes my whole...
She saved me.
my whole received tweet, I feel like I'm in good company here
there you
now.
Go.
I understand.
Precisely.
I never mistook Ho Chi Minh City for Milwaukee, though. And so, I mean, not to...
Yeah, I never saw any pictures of any tanks rolling over the chain link fence of the mayor's residence in Milwaukee or anything.
That's just it. It's easy for me to make fun, but if someone put a picture in front of me of just the outline of the Milwaukee skyline, I probably wouldn't know it's Milwaukee. Yeah. I probably wouldn't know Ho Chi Minh City either. Maybe that's how that happens. Wow, and the RNC will not even comment on it. It's fascinating.
It's kind of embarrassing.
A little bit. But what happened to the whole, Hannah, just say we're sorry. Say whoops.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And move on. It extends. We're all in communications. It extends the story if you do the no comment on it. When it's something as little as that, and the comms guy, well, I guess, they'll protect their tweets and get their student loans paid off, but the comms people should just say, my bad, sorry.
Well, we don't have the resident lawyer in house, but the litigious society, and people innocently posting wrong photos and getting, without attribution and things like that on websites and getting the big court judgment against them.
See, I don't want to go there, but that's a question. So does Ho Chi Minh sue because they got mistaken for Milwaukee, or does Milwaukee sue because they got mistaken for Ho Chi Minh?
That's right.
Well, and that's one thing.
They probably both sue, let's be honest.
Yeah, let's be honest. That's one thing that I feel like, I pride myself that the show does this all the time, but when we screw up, we admit it, right? Because, everyone screws up every once in a while.
Exactly.
I think the world would be a much better place if more people just took ownership of their mistakes, let everyone know, like, hey, I acknowledge I did this. I'm sorry. I'm going to use it as a learning experience to not let it happen again. It's so easy, and I feel like you're forgiven easier if you own it. You know what I mean?
You are so right. And what I guarantee you what this staffer was scared about was, oh my God, I assume it was a staffer that posted, oh my gosh, there's going to be, the DNC is going to pay for ads because they got millions and billions to run ads, and they're going to pay for ads saying that we're all dumb. You can't elect us. You can't trust us with responsibility because they don't even know the difference. And that negative political ad voice, they don't even know the difference between Milwaukee and Vietnam.
Is that Morgan Freeman?
Larry can probably think back to our early days in radio when the consultant always said, never draw attention to your mistakes. If they didn't hear it, it didn't happen.
That's right.
Day and age of the internet and blogs and podcasts and all, that day is long gone, isn't it?
And it takes on a life of its own so fast now. But that staffer is so scared that the other team is going to run with it. And even if the other team runs with it, Hannah, you're exactly right. People get it. No one expects, a 1,000 batting average every time. We're all doing our best with it. And so, but we all try to paint it into this, well, if he didn't even know the difference between Ho Chi Minh City and Milwaukee,
that's a valid
how
comment.
can we trust him with blah, blah. And as the guy who's written some of those ads, I can tell you that. That's definitely what I would do. And I can hear the other side, their head popping. Well, Larry, if it was the DNC, you would exactly say those ads. Yeah, that's true.
Very true.
I'm at enough to admit it.
Did you see what the candidate thought he said? Did you see where he thought he was going?
Give a call to Joe Biden. Ask him, don't go to Vietnam.
Did we let Morgan Freeman into the studio this morning?
The sinister campaign ad voice is one of our, if I can tell you, there are seasons in the news, as you guys know, where that voice is the predominant voice.
protestors, Larry Behrens.
Thanks, John. You know, they all left when they heard I was coming, but Brian showed up, and I really appreciate that. So we're here with Brian Crane, City Administrator. Thanks so much for coming in and talking with us.
You know, I had to come in. I drove by the parking lot. It was a little empty. Everybody's gone, so I thought I might as well stop in.
There's a guy in there struggling. He's going to come help us. I appreciate it. I need all the help I can get. So glad to have you with us. And we were talking during the break. I'm relatively new to the area, but I just have to say, you know, my family and I chose this area because there's so much great stuff going on here. So first of all, thank you for that, because we've been in cities in the Southwest that weren't well run, and we see the difference it makes when things are going well. And I know there are a number of things that you guys are continuing to address. And a lot of it is on Capitol Avenue. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been just a lot of activity over the last few years with city staff and our community trying to really reclaim an area that once had real glory to it, that unfortunately was just, you know, going downhill really fast over the last 20 years. And we've luckily been able to acquire those. And, you know, usually cities have a few ways to try to get property owners to do the right thing. It's carrots or sticks. And we talk about that a lot. And, you know, the carrots are incentives and the sticks, you know, code enforcement. And unfortunately, we had to do the code enforcement way. That takes a long time. It's very expensive. But we're at that point now where we have the opportunity, after going through court, acquiring those properties. It's about 20. We've got a couple that we were able to save, the historic homes, and we'll see if anybody's willing to put, you know, proposals on those. But we got this opportunity to really let that redevelopment happen on a historic area really close to our capital.
And I don't want to give short shrift to a lot of the groundwork, because you're right, it takes so much effort, legally speaking, paper, any number of things to get to where you are right now. And so I don't want to quickly move on, but I'm sure there's a vision for what we're hoping it will be in I don't know, a short amount of time or a long amount of time. What is the hope now for the next steps, you think?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And really, hopefully this week we're getting out what we call an RFP, request for proposals, where we're going to the community and we're saying, hey, if anybody's interested in any of these lots that we've acquired, submit a proposal, tell us your timeline, tell us your vision. The city created an overlay district in that area that really is going to guide what the structure should look like and what they should be about. And hopefully we'll get proposals back that our council can go through and say, yeah, we think this is a great property to give to.
Silly question on my part. Are these proposals going to be residential? They're going to be business? All of the above?
They could be mixed use. They could be residential only. That's the good thing about that area is you drive by it and you'll see some, you know, 2-story buildings, might have apartments on top, a nice association on the first floor, some business, communications. There's just a lot of activity going on over there and a lot of mixed use. So it could be a variety of things.
Can we do a quick segue, I guess, Brian? Because the council the other night, the Jefferson City Council, and what we were referring to as Capitol Avenue, the area of the old historic homes just immediately east of the Missouri State Capitol. But the city council pushed ahead with an idea to address the growing homelessness issue in Jefferson City.
Yeah, and that's, you know, a lot of activity on that Capitol Avenue area was, you know, empty structures. And when you have empty structures, you start to have that infiltration of people trying to get in them, whether it's homeless or just people trying to do, you know, nefarious things in homes they don't own. And staff's been really good about clearing those structures, trying to keep people out, trying to keep it safe. But we've just seen a real influx over the last few years of the homeless. And this isn't a local issue. It's a national issue. And I think that's why the Mayor Fitzwater, and the council said we need to take a look, and his leadership on this, to try to put together a group of people that can really talk to other groups in the community, figure out what's going on, figure out what the solutions are for our locale. Like I said, this is a national issue. So if we can just kind of try to figure out what groups are doing what in our community, what opportunities there are, really take a scientific method to this and say, you know, what's the hypothesis, and really try to dig in and come up with some report on how the city and this community can maybe try to minimize the impact in our community. I don't think we can ever get rid of somebody that's decided that they don't want to live in a home. And but we can hopefully minimize and create opportunities for them to maybe take an alternate path. And I think that's what this is going to be really key, is to figure out what those paths are and what the options are and what other communities are doing, and really try to elevate a person's life to where they feel good. And I think, one of the associations we talked to this week says, just think of your worst day that you've ever had in your life, and then think about that being that person's day every day. And that's really what some of these individuals are dealing with. So I think there's going to be, a mix of compassion, and then don't make it too easy and don't make it too comfortable that we just increase it. So there's going to be, this committee is going to really deal with two diametric opposition type situations where you, on the one hand, you say, let's create more for them. Mm-hmm. And then the other side that says, if you give them too much, you're just making it worse. And I think the balance that this community is going to have to find in that struggle of different opinions is really what we're going to have to focus on, and then try to figure out where the common ground is.
It really is. I mean, for me, it's I don't want to say age-old question, but I think if you were to ask 100 people, 100 of them would tell you, yes, we want to help, but we want it to be effective help. We want it to be the help that solves something, not perpetuates something. And and then that gets into, well, then what does that look like? And that is the devil of the details that really works out, because there is an element of, can you incentivize this if the help is there is so good? But the other part is, you also recognize too that it is sometimes a hard luck situation, sometimes economic situation. And so as you all have examined this, and it is a part of the task force's job to not only do this kind of inventory of resources in the community, but is it also identifying how it happens here in Jefferson City, understanding it is a national problem. You're absolutely correct about that. But is it drug related? Is it domestic related? Or is it all of the above?
Yeah, and I think what we tend to see when we look at it from that angle is it is usually all of the above. Mm-hmm. Now, is there a certain segment that seems to be a little heavier here? That could be the case. But I think what you hit on is exactly right. What we got to do is really inventory the resources and come up with what some strategic goals are, and then come up with some objectives to achieve those goals. So I think that's what this task force that the mayor's put together is going to be, a mix of, community members, groups that are involved in that, and then also elected and appointed officials that deal with it day in and day out, and try to bring them together and come up with some common goals.
Jefferson City Administrator Brian Crane's in with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Brian, could you give us an update on the planned for a hotel combined conference center literally right downtown, just a block up the street from the governor's mansion and the Capitol and all? Where are we at with that? We understood the News Tribune building, the demo crews have been on that site.
That's right, and that's an exciting project. And I just want to really quickly talk about just the amount of investment we have real quick. And I know I don't have a lot of time, but if you look at what's going on at the Capitol complex and the roughly $600 million, maybe $700 million the state's investing in the Capitol complex over the next few years. You look at the conference center project as you go down Capitol Avenue that you asked about. That's another big project with a parking garage, a hotel, and a conference center that we've talked about for so many years. And then the investment on Capitol Avenue that we talked about earlier, with all of the homes that are and lots that are hopefully going to be redeveloped on. And then you get to MSP, where we're continuing to do work down there, and the state's investing more money in lab and the new DNR State Parks building that was an old shoe factory. So you look at the level of investment in those, 5 to 10 blocks, and it's tremendous. And the conference center is one of the catalysts of that project. And it's really going to be a great opportunity for us. We're in that kind of discovery phase right now, where the experts, the consultants that we've hired, are doing their work, the feasibility studies, to try to figure out, what is feasible on that lot. We're continuing with the demolition of the News Tribune property that we acquired last year. So if you drive by there now, you'll see that activity. We needed a parking garage anyway. If anybody's been in that parking garage, it's coming up on about 60, 70 years old. It was due for retirement. We did a study that says it needs to come down. the same time the conference center didn't make much sense at MSP anymore, we had this opportunity to include a parking garage structure that we already needed on Madison Street and Capitol, expand it in the area where the News Tribune site is, and put a stacked hotel and conference center on it as well. So that's the idea. That's the thought. That's what we're working on right now. Hopefully early fall, we'll start seeing the fruits of the consultants' work come out so that the community can evaluate that, and we can say what's feasible, what is it going to take, and what's it going to look like for level of commitment, and how are we going to structure this.
So, silly question. I know we're up on a break, but when you say the fruits in the fall, are we talking like mock-ups of what it could look like?
Yeah, you'll see, mock-ups, budgets, hotel feasibility studies, parking studies, all those things that really try to drill down on and the market study.
Nice.
That really puts together those plans and says, this is what your community can afford, this is the kind of business you can expect, and this is what you can build, and this is what it might look like.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, Brian, thanks for stopping in. Really appreciate the information. Brian Crane, City Administrator for Jefferson City, spending some time with us on Wake Up
John Marsh along with Larry Behrens. The Morning Bell, business news with a twist without Stephanie Bell this morning.
Womp womp.
Yep. Stock indexes look for some big gains today. NVIDIA's the story, the big record-breaking surge, which catapults it to the title, I guess, what we call it, the world's most valuable publicly traded company. Futures for the S&P 500 point to about 0.4% after they closed Tuesday because of the Juneteenth holiday, securing the 31st record close of the year. And Wall Street looks set to continue the winning ways. And man, oh man, Larry, it's been volatile on Wall Street. 1 week we see the bottom kicked out from under it, and then we're back to record-breaking surges.
First of all, I appreciate you not mentioning what we were discussing during the break, because I had to ask what NVIDIA does. I consider myself someone who's kind of up on things. I'm like, who's NVIDIA? And now they're the world's most valuable public company, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have no idea who this is.
Came charging out of the ranks of AI.
Oh my gosh.
And it's, boy, oh boy, just the value. I mean, they surpassed Microsoft.
I'm just stunned. I'm stunned by my ignorance. I shouldn't be about it, but it is, what I struggle with, I think what a lot of folks struggle with is because I see that line, Wall Street look to continue its winning ways in 2024. And I know folks have 401ks. I know folks are in the market in various degrees, but the disconnect between what I see in the grocery store and then what I hear coming out of Wall Street is really interesting. And all I know is my GameStop stock is probably, I don't know, is it good or bad? I need to check. I need to see.
You're still holding the Apple stuff because Apple's fallen out too, thanks to NVIDIA.
I saw Apple and Disney are both falling out a whole lot lately, and so I guess usurped to Microsoft as the most valuable company. It's all, when I read them, all I think is like, golly, 20 years ago, Larry, why did you not?
Oh yeah,
I know, put $3 or $4 in down this way.
Like you mentioned, you brought up GameStop. Who would ever have thought that whole deal with the young guy who got in the middle of that and started hedging his bets on that one, and it
basically was an internet meme.
Exactly.
Yes.
That had this massive payoff in the stock market. They even made a movie about it.
They did.
That's how you know you did something cool.
And the part I loved about that is it was started with some guys who were just mad because some folks on Wall Street said, oh, GameStop's going to fail and it's going to go away. And they're like, you know what? I liked it when I was a kid. So I'm just going to buy stock in it. And then they bought stock in it, and then someone else bought stock in it.
My son was young. We spent a fortune. I should have GameStop stock.
Your default owner don't even know it. In the GameStop stock. Well, and golly, it's one of those things. I get these little signals that the world is passing me by a little bit, and one of them is when I talk to my kids about, some of them are college age, some of my kiddos, and they're like, Dad, what'd you do, to work? Because I was telling them work through college.
Back in the olden days.
Back in the olden days. And I will tell you the two jobs I had in college. It was movie theater projectionist.
Wow.
And Blockbuster video employee.
Wow.
Oh, Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Putting them back in the boxes and rewinding the ones that didn't come back rewound. And
I could, I should make a movie. I could tell you, yeah, absolutely. We would run the boxes and get yelled at for the late fees. And I remember thinking, who is this new company? Netflix. I had customer after customer yell at me, well, I'm just going to go to Netflix because they'll just mail them to my house. I'm like, who is this Netflix?
That'll never work.
People forget now, Netflix started by mailing DVDs to your house.
And then after that, video games.
And video games. That's right. And
we got those.
That's right. Let me tell you something else, kids. When I was on the telegraph machine, no, it wasn't. It's not that far back.
We talk about being a movie theater projectionist. That's all automated now, isn't it?
It is. Golly, no one sends you a letter in the mail when you've become the crudgety old man, but I must have received my letter about 5-6 years ago because I'm there now. I'm like, yeah, I used to have to cut the film in the movie theater and it was on film and cameras were on film and you kids don't know. And then my kids look up from the Fortnite and say, what? We're hungry?
And they say return to sender as undeliverable.
That's right. And so I'm glad to see there's, a company moving forward and doing well with the stocks, but I'm sad to see I had zero idea who they are. And I like to consider myself kind of in touch, but maybe I've been looking too much toward Washington and not enough to Wall Street. Well, we're going to talk a little more about something I know a little more about. Energy is coming up, and have you with us as well. And we have a great guest for you. You've seen him on Fox News, and he talks a whole lot about energy. And as we know, 2024 energy and a lot of things are on the ballot. Daniel Turner joins us. Good morning, Daniel. How are you doing, man?
Larry, it's great to be on the program with you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You had a recent op-ed in the New York Post talking about the political consequences for President Biden coming up in November due to his, no other way to describe it, disastrous energy policies. Walk us through why you see that happening.
Yeah, the European Parliament had their elections last week, and the Green parties were the ones that suffered the most. They lost around 30% of their seats in the parliamentary races. And the reason why is because Europe is a good 20 years ahead of us on the green agenda, on pushing green mandates and green rules and wind and solar. And enough Europeans are, after 20 years, saying, what has it gotten us? Energy is incredibly expensive in Europe, and anyone who's been there or is going there this summer just needs to rent a car, and you fill up and you say, boy, petrol is really expensive. And then you realize you're paying per liter and not per gallon. You realize it's almost triple the price. Utility bills are triple the price that they are in America. And Europe is also has another problem, which is this guy called Vladimir Putin, who's got a lot of money recently from very high energy prices. So enough Europeans got to the parliamentary election and said, what has the green agenda gotten us? It's gotten us an unstable continent, an economy in recession, incredibly high prices of food and electricity and energy. Why would we continue to put these people in power? And I'm hoping that becomes a prelude to our own American election here in November, because Biden has had not 20 years, but only 3.5 years to enact his agenda. And what has it gotten in the American people? Name one aspect of your life that's more affordable, that's more efficient, that all we hear now about is rising energy bills and rolling blackouts. So I'm hoping the same green agenda is disastrous here in November, and that's a win for America and a win for freedom.
Well, and it's interesting you bring it up, because we I had a reporter ask me, and we see it here in central Missouri. Gas prices have ticked down, and while I'll never bemoan gas prices going down, a lot of it is due to the fact that demand, as we kick into what is supposed to be the high demand season for gasoline, demand is actually dropping, because a lot of families are making the decision, I can't go on vacation this year, I can't get the same amount of gasoline I used to get because I have to make cost cutting decisions for my budget. And so it's actually the demand drop that has driven the recent decline in gas prices, because we know the Biden administration has done a bunch to undermine production in the United States. And now they're even talking about, again, for, I don't know, the third, fourth time going into our strategic petroleum reserve. It seems kind of like deja vu.
Yeah, exactly. And the demand question is really important. I'm glad to see energy prices or gas prices come down. I don't want to see the American people suffer, but if energy prices or gas prices are dropping because it's a sign of an economy in contraction, that's not the right reason, right? That's not good. We don't want to see our economy decline that much. That is why our utility bills are dropping. Remember, we just have to go back to 2019, 2020, even pre-COVID, when oil was $45, $48 a barrel, and energy prices, gas prices nationwide were $2 a gallon. And it was not because of lack of demand. It was because of a strong economy and a robust supply. So I want to see the American people in a better financial shape, no doubt. I don't want them to see them have to pay exorbitant amounts for their bills, but I want to see it for the right reasons. And what we're seeing now, and oil's up $10 in the last week. So even though if your gas prices have dropped recently, that's going to reverse itself pretty quickly.
We have the Callaway nuclear power plant just 30 miles up the road from mid-Missouri here, and the Ameren UE talks about generating a full 1/5 of their power out of that facility and all. And we hear so much talk from the administration about, that they push nuclear to the back burner and all the renewable energy sources and all. Why isn't there more of a push to move ahead, move back to nuclear?
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful to see nationwide. I think the small The first small micronuclear reactor is scheduled to come online in Tennessee, but not for a couple of years. Georgia recently restarted a nuclear power plant because they are in bad shape, their electric grid, and they just turned it back on. But you should see nuclear nationwide. I tell Americans all the time when they get nervous about nuclear, because there was a very deliberate fear campaign to scare Americans off nuclear. And it was successful. Americans will tell you, well, I don't want a nuclear reactor in my backyard. And they'll point to something like Chernobyl. I remind Americans that 90% of France's electricity comes from nuclear power, so much so that they will sell at peak moments their nuclear power to both Spain and to Germany and to Italy because they have that much of a surplus. And if nuclear doesn't scare the French, then it really shouldn't scare a bunch of Americans, right? So we should have nuclear power everywhere across the country.
Well, and that's just it, because we see an administration that picks winners and losers. And when you see the goalposts that they put forth, oh, we want something with no emissions. Well, here's nuclear. They say, oh, but not that. Well, we want something that is absolutely zero emissions. Well, your solar panels are emissions in China. Well, but that doesn't count. That's a different Earth than the rest of us. There are these moving goalposts of things that they say they care about. But when you get down to it, it's we want the sources that we control. I'm talking about the ones pushing this agenda so that we can then control who has power and who doesn't. And we are not doing this in a vacuum. If they take a 50 megawatt coal plant off the grid and say it's okay, we're replacing it with 50 megawatts of solar panel. Well, first of all, those solar panels don't work half the day, as we talk on the longest daylight day of the year right now. They don't work half of every single day. The sun has the audacity to set every single day. And secondly, we have not a shrinking but a growing demand for electricity. I know in my house, the kids, my basement looks like a computer lab in college now because my kids have worked and got their own computers. I don't know how much energy they're sucking up. Oh, wait, I do, because I paid the bill. And so our energy demand isn't going down. And so this one-to-one replacement doesn't work anymore, especially when you're replacing it with intermediate electricity like solar and wind.
And that's where the conversation starts to unravel. And it's unfortunate we can't have an honest conversation about energy in this country because it immediately turns into name-calling and finger-pointing. Last year, I testified before a congressional committee on these very issues. And rather than discuss it, we just yell at each other. And Congress bloviates in grandstands and makes viral videos. But no one actually wants to have the conversation. And what you're raising is really important. We are headed into a revolution of electrification in this country. Some of it is forced by the government, right? They don't want you to have a combustion engine car. They want you to have an electric car. Some of it is voluntary. You mentioned your kids all have laptops and cell phones, and moving into that direction, as well as comfort from generators and air conditioners, et cetera, et cetera. But some of also is market driven, and that, of course, I mean data centers and AI. Every time you go to the yellow pages, if you're a certain age, and you look up the name of a pizzeria or the phone number, that doesn't require electricity. Every time you say, and I'm going to make everyone's phone in the nation go off right now, every time you say, hey, Siri, what's the name of the pizzeria on Jones Street? And Siri has to think, that is using a ridiculous amount of electricity. It's using even more electricity than when you go to a Google search and you just use your phone. But that's how we look things up now. We don't go to yellow pages. We don't go to card catalogs. We don't go to libraries. We speak into our phone, and we want the data to come to us in a second. But for the data to come to you in a second means thousands and thousands of megawatts of electricity that are being used in these enormous data centers we're building all over the country. So we need more electricity than ever before, and we're on the cusp of needing probably 10 times more electricity than we currently produce. And then what is our government doing? It's shutting down nuclear, it's shutting down coal, it's shutting down natural gas, and it's saying, let's use wind turbines, which only work 15% of the time. So it almost seems like we're being pushed in one direction, and then government is hampering us from making that direction actually prosperous and profitable.
The EPA angle, we hear from them, the whole angle of, what was it, natural gas power plants will need to be a hydrogen twin to it and all that. What's that do to the industry? I mean, it's not hard to see that the end user is going to have to pay more for this kind of out there technology.
Absolutely. And these are all efforts to kill the back end of the fossil fuel industry. Biden is in a difficult shape right now. He looks at his poll numbers, or maybe he doesn't, but his campaign team looks at his poll numbers, and they're in a pickle because they have 3.5 years of campaign promises of him whispering creepily into that young girl's ears, I promise you I am going to end fossil fuels in America. He made very, very clear, no more oil, no more gas, no more drilling. And there really hasn't been any new oil, gas, or drilling. The industry has come online again after COVID, and we are producing a lot of oil again, but it's not from new drilling permits. It's from drilling permits that are 5 years old, that when oil prices rebounded, the industry got to work. But he has had an impact on the industry, and we look at $80 oil, and we look at the price of natural gas and the price of utilities, and now he has to campaign on that. And so what you mentioned is very important. The back end of all of this war on fossil fuels has been really expensive cost of living for Americans. And they see it in their grocery bills. They see it in their invoices every month and their statements. And so this is what Biden is going to have to try to campaign on, which is why he needs to pivot.
with pickleball, tennis, and
you're just
and the
going to
whole
lead right
debate
into
there.
it. I was trying to stay. I made it through most of the day without getting in trouble. First of all, I'm so glad to have you folks in. Let me just say, what a beautiful facility over. Is it? I'm new there at Washington Park?
Washington Park.
Yeah, tell me everything. And I guess there's a grand opening coming up too, right?
There is. There's 8 courts in at the old Dunsing Field area in Washington Park. But we are having our ribbon cutting on Saturday, June 29th, beginning at 10 a.m. After the ribbon cutting, there will be celebrity pickleball matches, so that'll be fun to watch. And then the pickleball club at 10:45 will be doing clinics. So if you are new to the sport and want to learn how to play pickleball, come on out, and there'll be some free instruction for that.
Well, and that's a debate. We were teasing Larry before because he volunteered the information, longtime tennis player.
That's what I say. And these new courts mean pickleball players are now outlawed from being on tennis courts, right? No, I'm kidding.
They are dedicated pickleball courts, but there's still tennis courts in Washington Park, or there's 4 courts at the corner of Dunklin and Lafayette Street.
Yep. And those are great courts.
Talk to us about what's hot this summer, no pun intended, guys, with Parks and Rec. This is a money time of the year, isn't it, for you all?
It is. We have a lot of summer events coming up, and we also have fall registrations opening up for youth soccer, youth baseball,
youth softball, and the Chiefs flag football program.
Boy, it's been so popular here in Jefferson City, and for folks who haven't been involved in Parks and Recreation in Jefferson City, former Little League manager here and all, we're spoiled here, aren't we?
I think so.
I mean, we've got some great facilities for a city this size.
Have some great facilities. I think we do a lot of programming that other cities don't do. So I think we're really fortunate in that. And we try to target all age groups and ability levels.
What about events coming up on the schedule you guys would like to promote?
Well, we have our movie night next Friday night on the South Capitol lawn. We are showing the 2023 version of The Little Mermaid. That show will begin about dusk or dark, about 8:45. Next Saturday, or actually next Friday, we're hosting the Mayor's Cup Golf Tournament at Oak Hills Golf Center. That is benefiting the Jefferson City Parks and Recreation Foundation. The Kiwanis Club used to do that tournament. They no longer exist in town. So the Parks and Recreation Foundation was approached to take that event over. So we're really looking forward to that. Teams can register either at the link or online. It's $400 a team. Shotgun starts at noon on Friday with the lunch beginning at 11.
How are you fixed for coaches and all for youth sports for the summer? That's always a challenge, and officials as well.
Right now, we're in really good shape. Obviously, we rely heavily on parents to step up to coach the kids' teams, but we really haven't had any issue trying to find coaches this year.
Well, that's go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say for our new fall youth soccer program, also we're partnering with UCC, so they're going to have instructional coaches and trainers for that as well, and that's open for kids from pre-K through 5th grade, so fall of this year, what grade they'll be in, and that's exciting because there'll be a lot of hands-on instruction and kind of just a different approach to filling those slots.
Because I can tell, I have 5 kiddos, and you think when they're not in school, summer, it's going to be laid back. And I was like, well, I'm trying to find things for the kids to do because I work at home and they're now my coworkers in my office. And so it would be great. So I'm enthused that you guys offer so much. Is it through the website that most folks could learn and get some information? If not the website, then where else?
Yeah, our website is jcparks